You ever have that feeling in your gut? Like something's happening right in front of your eyes, but you just can't put your finger on it? Yeah, that's been me for the last few months, but I kept brushing it off. Amanda, my wife, is 6 months pregnant with our first child, and I thought the distance between us was normal. Maybe it's the hormones. Maybe she's just exhausted from carrying our kid. I was stupid. Last Friday was the night everything cracked open. And looking back, I still can't figure out how I didn't see it coming. I was supposed to be at a late work meeting that evening, or so Amanda thought. I had actually finished earlier than expected, which made me excited to get home and maybe have one of those rare moments where we could relax and watch something stupid on TV. The house was dark when I got there, and it seemed empty. So I figured she was upstairs napping or something until I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway. I thought maybe she'd gone to the store. I texted her, but no response. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Still no reply, and her phone was going straight to voicemail. I'm not a paranoid guy, but something about that silence was digging under my skin. And that's when I did something I'd never done before. I opened her laptop. I felt guilty just looking at it like I was crossing some invisible line of trust. But at that moment, I didn't care. The first thing that popped up was a group chat. Her friends were talking about some party they'd all gone to, something I had zero clue about. The messages were full of details, laughing about the wild night. When Amanda jumped into the pool, one of her friends wrote, "I thought I'd die of laughter. Pregnant and still the life of the party." Wait, a party? My pregnant wife went to a party without telling me? I was dumbfounded. Not once did she mention it, and as far as I knew, she had spent the entire evening at home resting. But apparently, she'd been out drinking, jumping into pools, and God knows what else. I kept reading, and that's when things got worse. Her friend, Megan, wrote, "I still can't believe what happened with him." What was she thinking? Him? Who the hell was him? I could feel the blood rushing to my ears as I scrolled through the messages, piecing together fragments of what had happened. A name popped up, Jason. Some guy I didn't know who apparently got a little too close to Amanda that night. The group chat was full of teasing comments and vague inside jokes that made my stomach twist into knots. I don't know what I expected to find, but definitely not this. Pregnant. Partying. Another guy. I was pacing the living room at this point, my thoughts racing faster than I could keep up with. Where was she? What the hell was she doing? And why hadn't she said a word to me? An hour turned into 2. By the time I heard the front door creak open, it was almost midnight. Amanda walked in, carrying her heels in one hand and her phone in the other, wearing this smug little smile like she had just had the time of her life. The sight of her hit me like a train. Everything I had read, everything I didn't know, and everything I was about to find out. But that confrontation, that was only the start. When Amanda walked through the door that night, her mood was way too carefree for someone who had just come back from God knows where. She didn't even notice me at first, sitting there in the dark watching her like a hawk. She kicked off her shoes, stretched, and let out a long sigh like she had just come back from a spa day or something. I stood up, trying to keep my voice calm. "Where were you?" She froze. That smile I saw on her face, it vanished in an instant, replaced by something colder, more calculating. Her eyes darted toward the stairs like she was already planning her escape. "I went out with the girls," she said, her voice light, as if the answer was obvious. "Didn't you get my text?" That was her first mistake. There was no text. I knew it and she knew it. I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to hold it together. "You didn't text me. In fact, I've been trying to reach you all night. Your phone went straight to voicemail." She stared at me for a second, her face blank, then she laughed. Like a light laugh, the kind someone gives when they're trying to brush something off. "Oh yeah, my battery died." She shrugged, holding up her phone like that somehow made everything fine. I didn't even realize it until I was already out. I nodded slowly like I was accepting her excuse, but inside I was boiling. I couldn't stop thinking about the messages I saw. I knew she was lying, but I needed her to keep talking, to keep digging her own grave. "Must have been a good time," I said, trying to sound casual. "Where'd you go?" Her eyes flicked away for a second too long, and that was when I saw it. The hesitation, the calculating pause before she answered. "Oh, we just went to Megan's place. A few of us had dinner and hung out for a bit." She forced a smile, walking toward the kitchen like the conversation was over, but it wasn't. Not even close. "Megan's?" I leaned against the wall, my arms crossed watching her every move. Funny, because I heard something else. Something about a party. She stopped in her tracks. I could practically see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much she could get away with. Oh, well, yeah, it was more of a small get-together. You know how Megan is. She invites a few people over. Things get a little loud, no big deal. I couldn't believe the bullshit coming out of her mouth. I felt the anger rising in my chest, but I still needed more. I wanted to see how far she'd go with this charade. So this guy, Jason, the name tasted like poison in my mouth. Did he have fun at this small get-together too? Her reaction was instant. She spun around, eyes wide with shock, then quickly masked it with a fake laugh. Jason, what are you talking about? There was no Jason. You're being ridiculous, Adam. Am I? I snapped, my patience finally breaking. Couldn't hold back anymore, because according to your group chat, you were practically swimming with the guy. You didn't just go out with the girls. Amanda, you lied. You've been lying. The color drained from her face, and her mask slipped for a second. Then, just as fast, she put it back on, this time angrier, more defensive. Oh, so you've been snooping through my phone now? She snapped, her voice dripping with venom. What? You don't trust me? Is that it? You're going to sit there and act like I'm the bad guy because I went to a party. The way she turned it around on me, like I was the one who had crossed a line, was enough to make my blood boil. But that wasn't even the worst part. You were drunk, I said, taking a step closer. Drunk and pregnant. What the hell were you thinking? She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was being unreasonable. Oh, please. I had one drink. One. Don't act like I was partying all night. I stared at her, barely recognizing the woman standing in front of me. The lies were unraveling, but she still clung to them like they were her lifeline. She didn't even care about what she'd done, about how reckless and selfish she'd been. But I wasn't done yet. We're getting a DNA test tomorrow, I said, my voice cold final. I want to know if the child you're carrying is mine or Jason's. Her eyes flared with shock, then fury. Are you serious right now? How dare you accuse me of that? You've completely lost it, Adam. This is insane. Insane. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. No. What's insane is how far you're willing to go to keep lying, but I'm done playing this game. We're going for that test. First thing in the morning, Amanda stood there, her face hard, her jaw clenched, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. I didn't know what she'd do next, but one thing was clear. The truth was finally starting to come out, whether she liked it or not. Amanda didn't move. She stood frozen, staring at me like I had just dropped the most unbelievable accusation ever. But the worst part, there wasn't fear in her eyes, just pure rage. Not regret, not guilt. Rage. Like I had no right to call her out. Like I was the one betraying her. You think I'm cheating on you? She spat, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I'm carrying your child, Adam. Your child. And this is how you repay me? By throwing around wild accusations. Because I went to a party? I wasn't having it. Not anymore. I crossed the room in 2 long strides, barely containing the fury bubbling inside me. It's not just the party, Amanda. It's everything. The lying, the sneaking around, the sudden nights out, the phone always on silent. Your secret little world that I'm apparently not allowed to be a part of. You never told me about this guy, Jason. Why? She threw her hands up, exasperated, pacing the room like she couldn't believe what was happening. There is no Jason, she yelled, her voice cracking at the edges, but the way she said it, it was too rehearsed, too quick. God, Adam, he's just some guy who was there. I barely even spoke to him. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I took a deep breath, trying not to let her gaslight me into doubting what I already knew. Right? That's why your friends were laughing about it in the group chat. Right? About you and him getting a little too close. So what was it? Just harmless fun? Because that's not how it looked from where I'm standing. Amanda's face twisted in frustration, her eyes narrowing like she was weighing her next move. She opened her mouth to fire back, but I cut her off before she could spew more excuses. You know what? I don't care what you say right now, I said, my voice low, steady. You've lied to me enough. Tomorrow we're getting the DNA test, and that's final. And if I find out you've been lying about more than just Jason, I'm done. The silence that followed was suffocating. Amanda's face flushed with a mix of anger and shock, but I could see it. Just for a moment, her composure slipped. There was the flicker of something she didn't want me to see. Guilt? Panic? I wasn't sure, but it was enough to tell me I wasn't crazy for doubting her. And then, in the blink of an eye, she flipped the switch. She broke into tears, full-on sobbing, hands to her face, the whole act. You think I'd do that to you? She choked out between heaving breaths. You think I'd cheat on you while I'm carrying your baby? What kind of person do you think I am? I'm your wife, Adam. I can't believe this. You don't trust me at all. I just stood there watching her crumble, but something inside me had shifted. I had seen this show before. The waterworks, the deflection, turning the blame on me. This wasn't new. I've been falling for it for months, maybe even years, but this time it wasn't working. I felt nothing but cold resolve. When her sobs died down, she sat on the couch looking up at me with red tear-streaked eyes, searching my face for any sign of weakness. She was playing her last card, hoping I'd break, but I didn't. We'll see, Amanda, I said, my voice like stone. We'll see after the test. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to hold my ground. For a second, I thought she was going to explode again, but instead, she straightened up and wiped her face with the back of her hand. The tears were gone just as quickly as they'd come. Fine, she said, her voice cold, venomous. If that's what it takes to prove to you that you're being paranoid, then fine. I'll take the damn test. She stood up and stormed past me, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I didn't follow her. Instead, I just sat down staring at the floor, my head spinning with everything that had just gone down. The Amanda I knew, the woman I married, she was slipping away, or maybe she was never really there to begin with. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. My mind kept going back to that Jason guy, the way her friends talked about it like it was some joke, something to laugh off. But there was nothing funny about what was happening here. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And no matter how much I wanted to believe her, the pieces weren't adding up. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking through that door laughing carefree, like nothing was wrong. The lies, the secrets, the fake tears, and now the looming DNA test that could blow everything apart. Morning came, and Amanda was already up when I dragged myself out of bed. She didn't say a word to me as she got dressed, but I didn't need her to. We both knew what was coming next. This was the moment everything would change. The ride to the clinic was dead silent. No music, no small talk, just tension thick enough to suffocate us both. But in that silence, I knew one thing for sure. By the end of the day, I'd know the truth. One way or another. The clinic felt like a tomb. Cold, sterile, and suffocating. We sat side by side in the waiting room, but the space between us felt like miles. Amanda scrolled through her phone, avoiding my eyes, her face a perfect mask of indifference. I had no idea what was going on in her head, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. I just wanted answers. When the nurse called our names, Amanda stood up without a word, marching toward the back like this whole thing was some mundane chore she needed to get over with. But to me, it felt like my entire life was hanging on this moment. The test itself was straightforward. Swab paperwork done, but that didn't stop my heart from pounding like a drum in my chest. As I saw my name on the final form, I glanced at Amanda. She was already halfway out the door like she couldn't wait to leave. I followed her out into the parking lot, the weight of the silence between us crushing. We got in the car, and for a moment neither of us said anything. I had 1,000 questions boiling in my mind, but none of them mattered until those results came in. And that's when Amanda finally spoke, breaking the suffocating silence. "This is ridiculous, Adam," she said, her voice cold like we were discussing the weather. "You're going to feel like a complete idiot when the results come back and you realize this baby is yours." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. "If I feel like an idiot, at least I'll know the truth." She scoffed, shaking her head. Her lips twisted into a bitter smile. "You really don't get it, do you? You're destroying our marriage with your paranoia. You should be focusing on our future, on the baby, but no, you're too busy playing detective." Her words hit me, but not in the way she wanted. I felt the heat of anger rising in my chest, but I swallowed it down. The truth was, she didn't even try to defend herself anymore. It was all about turning it back on me, making me feel like the villain, like I was the one tearing us apart. But after everything I'd seen, all the lies, the sneaking around, How could she expect me to just sit back and pretend everything was fine? I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to speak without exploding. Instead, I drove home in silence, my thoughts a tangled mess. I kept replaying the night she came back from that party. The carefree smile, the smell of alcohol, the way her friends laughed about him, Jason, the guy who hovered in the background of everything even though Amanda pretended he was nobody. When we got home, Amanda didn't waste any time heading upstairs. "I'm going to lie down," she muttered, barely glancing at me as she disappeared into the bedroom. She always did this retreated when things got too real. I couldn't decide if it was fear, guilt, or just plain indifference at this point. I stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at the closed door, wondering what the hell I was doing. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand the truth, to force her to admit what she'd done. But another part of me, maybe the smarter part, knew that no matter how much I pushed, she wouldn't crack. Amanda was too good at this game, so instead I did something else. I went back to her laptop. I know I shouldn't have, but after everything I couldn't let it go. I needed to know what else she was hiding. And if she wasn't going to tell me, I was going to find out myself. This time I wasn't looking for vague messages or hints. I wanted something concrete, something that would either confirm my worst fears or give me a reason to believe her. I opened her emails first. Nothing unusual there. Then I went back to her group chat, scrolling through older messages, piecing together the timeline. That's when I found it. One message buried deep in the chat from a few weeks ago after another one of her nights out. Megan had texted her. "So what's going on with Jason? Are you going to tell him?" Tell him what? My heart started pounding in my chest. I scrolled through Amanda's reply. "Not yet. He's too suspicious right now. I need to wait." What the hell was she waiting for? What wasn't she telling me? Or worse, telling Jason? Before I could stop myself, I clicked through her recent photos. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe pictures from the party. Maybe something innocent that I could overanalyze. But what I found made my blood run cold. There were a handful of pictures from that night. Amanda looking happy, carefree, but one of them stood out. It was a photo of her with Jason, arms around each other, grinning at the camera, like it was the best night of their lives. And in the background, some guy was holding Amanda's shoes while she had clearly just jumped into the pool, pregnant, laughing, drunk with another guy's arm around her. I closed the laptop feeling like I'd just been sucker punched. It wasn't just the photo or the messages, it was everything. The lies, the manipulation, the gaslighting. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Amanda wasn't just playing me, she was playing both of us. I stood up pacing the living room, trying to decide what to do. Confront her again? What would it even matter? She'd deny it, twist the story, cry, scream. Anything to avoid admitting what I already knew. But what hit me hardest, what gnawed at the pit of my stomach, was the thought that this baby, our baby, might not even be mine. And in that moment, I realized something. I was done waiting, done playing her games, done hoping for some miraculous redemption. The DNA test would tell me what I needed to know, and once I had those results, everything would change. The house felt eerily silent after I closed Amanda's laptop. That picture of her and Jason had burned itself into my mind, their smiles mocking me, haunting me every time I blinked. I had all the evidence I needed, but it still didn't feel real. There's this moment when you know your life is about to shift in a way you can never come back from, and I was standing on that edge, staring into the abyss. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not without the DNA test results in hand, but I wasn't going to sit there and let her keep pretending. My gut was screaming for me to take action, to rip the mask off and force her to face what she'd done. That evening, Amanda came downstairs acting like nothing had happened. She asked if I wanted dinner in that casual, almost robotic way she'd adopted lately, like she was just going through the motions of being a wife. I stared at her, trying to remember the woman I'd fallen in love with, the one I thought I'd be starting a family with. But all I saw now was someone I didn't recognize, someone who had been lying to my face for God knows how long. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low but steady. The words came out sharper than I intended. She froze her back to me as she stood at the counter, pretending to pour herself a glass of water. "About what?" she asked, not turning around. Her voice had that defensive edge again, like she knew exactly what I was about to say and was already preparing for battle. "About Jason," I replied, the name hanging in the air between us like a grenade waiting to go off. The glass in her hand clinked against the counter as she put it down, but she still didn't face me. I already told you, Adam, she said slowly, carefully. There's nothing going on with him. He's just some guy. You're making this into something it's not. I clenched my fist, trying to hold back the wave of anger crashing over me. Really? Because it didn't look like nothing in that picture I found. You two look pretty cozy for just friends. Her shoulders stiffened. She finally turned around, her eyes locking onto mine, but there was no surprise there, just cold, calculated control. You went through my laptop again? She snapped, her voice rising. God, Adam, how many times do we have to go through this? I can't believe you don't trust me enough to. Stop. I interrupted, my voice louder now. I was done playing this game. Just stop, Amanda. I've seen enough. The lies, the sneaking around, the partying while pregnant. None of it makes sense. You expect me to believe you've been completely innocent through all of this? After everything. Her face tightened, but she didn't back down. What do you want me to say, Adam? That I'm sorry for going out with my friends? That I should have told you about Jason? She threw her hands up, pacing the kitchen like she was the one who had been wronged. Fine. I should have told you, but I didn't cheat on you. Not that it matters since you've already decided I'm the bad guy. I laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. You did cheat on me, Amanda. Maybe not in the way you think, but you've been lying to me for months. Hiding things, sneaking off. And now I'm supposed to sit here and believe that this baby is mine without a shred of doubt. Her eyes flared, and for a second, I thought I saw a panic flash across her face, but she recovered quickly, her voice hardening. You really think I'd be that stupid? That I'd let some random guy come between us while I'm pregnant? God, Adam, you're paranoid. This whole thing is in your head. My hands were shaking, and I felt the last thread of control slipping away. Then why are we waiting for a DNA test, Amanda? Why didn't you tell me about him from the start? If there was nothing going on, why hide it? Her silence told me everything. She looked down, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, lips pressed together like she was biting back whatever she really wanted to say. And in that moment I knew she wasn't going to admit it. She'd never admit it. She was too far into her web of lies to ever come clean. I leaned against the counter, staring at the floor, the weight of it all crushing down on me. I'm not doing this anymore. I said quietly, more to myself than to her. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped, her voice sharp. I looked up, meeting her cold, angry eyes. It means this marriage is over, Amanda. Whether that baby's mine or not, I can't keep doing this. The lying, the manipulation, the constant gaslighting. I'm done. Her expression shifted in an instant. The anger melted away, replaced by something I hadn't seen in a long time, desperation. She took a step toward me, reaching out as if to close the distance between us, but I didn't move. Adam, wait. Don't do this. She pleaded, her voice softer now, almost trembling. We're having a baby. You can't just walk away. I shook my head, the exhaustion finally sinking in. I can't stay, Amanda. Not like this. I'll be there for the baby if it's mine, but we're done. For the first time in months, Amanda didn't have a quick, snarky comeback. She stood there frozen, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes like she couldn't process what was happening. And for a brief second, I wondered if she'd finally dropped the act, if she'd begged me to stay to fix things. But she didn't. Instead, she turned on her heel, storming upstairs without another word, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of our marriage. And that's when it hit me. No matter what the DNA test said, this relationship was already dead. The truth had been rotting between us for far too long, and now there was no going back. The sound of Amanda's footsteps pounding up the stairs echoed through the house, each step a reminder of how far we'd fallen. I stayed in the kitchen for what felt like hours, leaning against the counter, staring blankly at the spot where we just argued. There was nothing left to say. She'd retreated to our bedroom like she always did, leaving me in the rubble of everything she'd destroyed. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. The anger, the heartbreak. They were still there, but now they were joined by a new feeling.